Hello, this is Alazir Chess, here to help you to realize your potential. And today, the Chess Wizard is going over a game between Sergey Tivyakov and Alexander Potapov. This game was played in 1994 in the Russian Championship at Elista. And then I'm going to be going over one of my own games where I followed Tivyakov's model to, well, you could say perfection, where I beat a 2400 rated player on LIChess with 97% accuracy. So let's get into it, guys. So the game was a Caro-Kann with Tivyakov and Potapov, e4, d4, d5, well, e4, c6, d4, d5, knight d2, d takes e4, knight takes, bishop f5, transposing into the Capablanca variation, which is usually after knight c3, d takes, knight takes, bishop to f5. Here we have knight g3, bishop g6, h4, h6, knight to f3, knight d7 to cover the e5 square so the knight doesn't jump in and threaten to capture the light squared bishop. Pawn to h5, bishop h7, bishop d3, takes, queen to c7, bishop to d2, e6, castling queenside, knight gf6, queen to e2, castles queenside, knight e5, knight takes, pawn takes. By the way, this is not the best idea. It is better for black to play knight to b6 in this position, so this way the queen can cover the f7 pawn. After knight e5, knight takes knight, pawn takes, knight to d7, pawn f4, bishop e7, bishop to e3, hitting a7 as well as controlling the c5 square. This is a major point in this variation because here if bishop to c5, we have knight e4 hitting this bishop twice and aiming to sink our knight into d6. So we can't even defend with something like queen to b6 because of bishop takes, and then knight d6 check. And we're going to go after this f7 pawn. Also, in the idea of bishop c5, knight e4, if bishop to e7, we have knight d6 anyway, due to bishop takes, pawn takes, queen to a5, rook d3, and a2 cannot be snatched due to rook a3, queen d5, rook d1, queen b5, swap out the queens, damaging the formation, and then rook takes pawn. And here we have rook to a8 is an idea, followed by bishop to a7. We also have a passed pawn on d6. Black has a hard time moving anything, and white is clearly just winning here. And in the event of 17 knight c5, we have king b1 to prophylactically defend a2 and pass the move back to black. If rook takes, we have queen takes, and if rook to d8, queen g4. And that's another thing that's very instructive about this variation is you often take back with the queen, because if the rook comes to challenge you, you can just dart out to g4, hitting the g7 pawn. After bishop to f8, here a3 is in order, because in the event of bishop takes knight, bishop takes, queen takes g7, black has the double exclamation, bishop to a3. Why is this move so good? Because after pawn takes, queen b6, king c1, queen d4, king b1, queen to b6 is a draw. And if king a1, queen d4, it's also a draw because c3 loses to queen takes, king b1, and rook d5, aiming at mating white on the b5 square. Also, after a3, queen a5, here you have bishop to c1 as an option, and we also have pawn to f5 as an option. And in the event of Bishop takes knight on move 21. Bishop takes, queen takes g7, bishop a3. If instead of pawn takes bishop, we have knight to e4. Now there's queen b6 and knight to d6 check. Here, rook takes knight does not work because after pawn takes, the queen on g7 defends the pawn on b2. And in the event of knight d6 check, black has king to b8. King to b8 defends, and after knight c4, queen d4, we do not have knight takes bishop due to queen to d1 with a back rank mate in 2. And in the event of pawn takes bishop, queen takes knight, queen takes h6, a5. Black is doing much better here and is going to get the rook d5 idea in some lines, and white is going to be in a lot of trouble. Therefore, in the game, after bishop to e7, bishop e3, queen a5, instead of bishop to c5, king b1, knight b6, pawn to c4, queen b4, rook c1, avoiding a trade and defending the pawn on c4, rook to d7, knight e4, rook hd8, rook c2, f5, bishop to d2 and intermezzo, queen a4, and now knight to d6. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and here you cannot play rook takes pawn due to c5. So we have rook to e8 to defend e6, b3, creating a nice pawn chain from a2 to c4, queen a6, bishop c3. So now the queen and the rook are seeing each other. The bishop moves out the way. So this way rook takes on d6 is still impossible due to c5. After queen takes queen, rook takes. These two pieces are both under attack. Here, a move like knight to d5 might seem like it helps, but bishop takes g7 is also in order, amongst other things. And here after g4, after rook e8, b3, queen a6, bishop c3, rook f7, g4, knight to d7, pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes is impossible due to queen takes rook with a check, and then picking up the rook on f7. Rook takes f5, bishop takes, c5, bishop takes h6, queen c6, hitting the rook on h1, rook to d1, knight to f6, bishop g5, hitting the knight, king to d7, h6, passed pawns must be pushed, queen e4, queen d2, so this way we can slink around with queen a5, e5, rook e1. Now that the queen moved out of the way, e5 has been played. Now we put the rook on the file and pressurize the e5 square. Queen d4 from Potapov. Terviakov plays queen to a5. Now queen takes d6 and king takes d6 both run into rook d2, winning the black queen. So rook to c8, defending the c7 square. And bishop takes knight, rook takes, queen b5 check, king d8, f takes e5, hitting the rook. Now we have 3 passed pawns, including 2 connected aiming at the black king. Rook to f2, and queen takes b7, and Potapov resigned because there's a mate threat on e7, and there's nothing that he can do. According to the engine, it's mate by force in a few moves. So this was a game that was a major source of inspiration to me. Shout out to DC, you know who you are, for recommending me some information to look at. And so let's go through it one more time. At the top, and then we'll get into a game that I played on Ally Chess versus a 2400 player. It was a 3-minute game, but it was still an instructive game that follows the same formula that Tiviakov used in this game. So that's why I'm showing the games as a pair. So here, let's take a look at Lichess, and let me just check my camera. Okay. Here you can see I had 97% accuracy. My opponent had 87% accuracy. My opponent was 2494 at the time of this game, and this got me back over 2400. E4, C6, D4, D5, knight D2, takes, bishop to F5, knight G3, bishop G6, knight to F3, knight D7, to stop knight to E5, H4, H6, H5, bishop H7, bishop D3. We have the bishop swapping out, queen C7, bishop D2, castles queenside, E6, queen to E2, knight GF6, and knight to E5. Now, again, knight to B6 should be played. We have knight takes, pawn takes, knight to D5, A3 to prevent any knight B4 ideas, queen to B6, pawn to C4, knight back to C7, and now knight to E4, controlling the D6 square. Here we have king to B8 from black. Here we can see that the position is already terrible, but after bishop to E7, which is the recommended computer move, here we can see that bishop to C3, as well as G4 and bishop to E3 are all on the agenda, and white is much better in this position. Now, here, after knight E4, king B8 instead of bishop to E7, we have bishop to E3, bishop C5, bishop takes, queen to A5, and now bishop to D6 to protect the E5 pawn, also to get ready to swap out the bishop for this knight, and just implant our knight on the D6 square. King to A8, bishop takes knight, queen takes, F4, F6, rook takes rook, rook takes, rook D1, rook F8, queen to D3. Here I didn't care at all about F takes, queen takes due to queen to D8 check. And here if queen to B8, I can swap out queens. And if rook takes queen, rook takes, queen to B8 is the only move. I swap out and I'm up a knight. So here, after rook F8, queen E3, F takes, my opponent played A6. I dropped the queen into D6, and after queen F7, due to the double attack of queen on queen and queen on rook, queen F7, knight to C5, rook to B8, and here I got my one inaccuracy of the game because the computer wants to play knight takes E6 instead of knight takes A7. This is ridiculous in my opinion though, because knight takes A6, pawn takes, queen takes E6 is just winning. Queen to B7 could be played, but I can swap out and play either rook D6 or rook D7 next move, depending on which way he captures. According to the computer, which I actually missed during the game due to the threat on b2 or the apparent threat on b2. I don't even have to swap queens. I could just simply play rook to d6 here, and the queens will swap next move. The black queen is pinned to the black king. Therefore, if queen takes queen, rook takes, I'm going to pick up another pawn. So here, after rook b7, though, we have queen takes a6, king b8, rook d8 check, king c7, and queen to d6. So what do you guys think of these games? Also, this is just another reason to study the games of the great grandmasters, whether they're of the past or of the recent past, as the inspirational game from Sergei Tivyakov was played in 1994. So, guys, follow the channel, study every day, aim to get better. I'm working on getting to 2700 on eChess and getting my National Master title right now. Also, I'll be posting cat videos since you guys seem to enjoy that. I got more views on my cat video than the videos on the channel that are based on chess. So I'll be uploading both types of videos very soon. Stick around, guys, for more content, and have a good day. Peace.